Hello, everybody. Welcome to Social In-Person Learning here at the Liberal Gun Club annual meeting. I've heard a lot of great stories about all the fun everyone's been having with classes and actual face-to-face socialization. So apparently not everything that happens in Vegas really stays there. I hope everyone's having a great time.
Not everything.
Apparently not. Before I hand this over to the next speaker, who's standing at the podium there, I'd like to draw everyone's attention to the volunteers who made this year's annual meeting a reality. Official volunteers include Danny, Lonnie, and Paul, but others stepped up to help out, like Dave, another different Dave, Sean, Mike, and Blake. If I missed anyone, my apologies. I am over 1,900 miles away, so there's a little bit of a lag there. Let's take a moment to give them a round of applause to show our appreciation for all of their hard work. Well, I didn't know that. Come on now. I am monitoring our live stream questions in the Discord server. So if you have any, throw them there. We might be able to get to them. And now I'm going to hand it over to Ed. Well, figuratively anyway. Go ahead, Ed.
Anyway, thank you all. As Kyle pointed out, we couldn't have done this without the volunteers. So this is our 12th meeting, the first one in 3 years. I haven't seen some of you people in a long time, and I probably could have gone a little while longer, Al. We've been doing this since 2010. The club's been around since 2008, 9. But we've been doing these meetings since 2010. We had these glorious plans to make a 10th anniversary in person, replicating our very first meeting. That went straight off the deep end, didn't happen. But we spent the next 2 years figuring out how to do virtual stuff, which is why Kyle is in the background speaking as my conscience, I think. So Illinois stepped up. Ohio was going to have it. And then we had to cancel it at the last meeting because COVID came back. But I've had COVID twice now, so I think I'm okay. So thank you all for being here. It's really important and it's really exciting. And I think that everybody had a decent amount of fun this weekend. Yeah. I want to do a couple things. I want to talk about who's here and what they do. I want to talk about things that we've been doing this year. I'm going to hand it over to Eric. He's going to talk about things like demographics and really boring stuff. No, what the club actually looks like. No, I'm kidding. What the club actually looks like. Who does, who's coming to us and actually learning things, right? After that, I'm going to turn it over to Lara. She's going to talk for a few minutes. John White is not here. He had to spend time with his family. And I'm going to take over for the brief part of John's experience. Talk a little bit about what's in the goodie bag. We've got at least one award. And then we're going to hand it over to our keynote speaker, Michael Tinker Pearce, who the people on the live stream can't see, but he's in the back of the room. He's going to raise his hand and say, hello, I'm Michael Tinker Pearce. Are we out of books? Are we out of Tinker's books? If you haven't, he'll sign your book. So I do want to reiterate what Kyle was trying to say before we were all clapping about how this happened. This could not have happened without Danielle Casey, who will now stand up. Lonnie Weissman. The only reason this happened, he's not very tall. The only reason, I'm getting there. I got it. It wouldn't have happened. The advanced planning, all the stuff that made this work, the goodie bags, the actual merchandise, a combination of these two people and John White, who cannot be here because his mom's sick. So one more round for everybody, including them. I also want to shout out to Blake Alexander, who apparently can't stop working. We do have Paul Cronk and Sean Tittle. Nobody knows who you are, but you stand up. These two guys made the AV happen. So if I look bad, it's their fault. And of course, Kyle, who's not appearing in this film because he doesn't like traveling. He doesn't like you people anyway. He doesn't like anybody. It's part of his
True
charm.
story.
Don't take it personally.
But anyway, so thanks again, everybody. Where did she go? Did she disappear? We could not have made this happen without all of the work that led up to this. So, yeah, I don't know why she's still working. Oh, she's over there getting books. I do want to talk a little bit about the state of the club, things you might have missed, go through some of that stuff. So, this was a big deal. So this consumed a lot of our attention in the last couple of months because we had to remember how to do an in-person event. There were a lot of cooks in the kitchen, and we managed to pull it off anyway. So we've been doing the social distance learning thing since May of 2020. All right. That's been happening every 2 weeks. So again, if the people that raised their hands earlier that didn't know who Kyle was, every 2 weeks on a Tuesday, we do something that's live streamed in the same way this is currently being live streamed. It's usually Scott Richardson hitting a gun with a hammer, but sometimes it's panel discussions around race in firearms ownership or mental health in firearms ownership or veterans in firearms ownership or really any group that you can think of. We try to make sure that we're doing that periodically and consistently. And the last couple of years have taught us an awful lot about how to make that happen. So that's been a wildly successful thing. While we may not get hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people in the live streams, the videos get watched. People read them. People comment on them. I'm still responding to comments from 2 years ago. So we've been doing that full on. Last year, if you remember during the virtual, we came up with the new logo, which is the thing that's on the screen behind me, right? John and Ivan worked real hard on that. We had a big, sort of big discussion around inclusivity, updating things, making things look modern. We now have that logo merch in the shop. Yeah. So, I think as of yesterday. So John, if you're watching this, make sure it's up there. We had another AR lower run. So there's a handful of folks that have got logoed lowers out there. I think they started being delivered just 2 weeks ago. So people starting to get that. Yeah. We, for better or for worse, we're going to talk about this more when we get to Lara's section. There was a win in the Supreme Court, and we did file a brief. So, and of course, we've been growing. All of the various things that have been happening over the last 3 years have drawn more and more people. Eric's going to get an update on those actual numbers, but they're significant. And on that note, I think it's Eric's turn.
All right. Of course. So can everybody hear me? Yeah.
Oh, no, you need a microphone.
No, but the microphone.
Is that too loud? Closer? All right.
I did the thing I wasn't supposed to do, and I crossed the yellow tape.
Thanks, Ed. And everybody, I just want to say thanks to everyone who managed to come out. We really appreciate it. These events are so amazing to get training from some great folks. Alessandro, Amy, Riley, thank you for putting on what you've done. Jim Downey, the black powder thing, bringing out the Gatling gun. Are you kidding me? That was awesome. So, thanks for coming out, and thank you for signing up for these trainings, and everybody that showed up with just guns and having a free range day. Thanks for doing that. The whole point of doing this is to have a good time and to meet everybody and to kind of put faces to names so that when we go back to our respective states and cities, we can talk about what we're doing and, talk about other people that we know throughout the country and the experiences that we've had. So again, thanks everybody for coming out. We appreciate it. So a couple of quick things that I want to note about the number of chapters that we have now. David, thank you for getting the Washington, D.C., Virginia chapter done on the books. That's been a quasi chapter for quite some time. They've been kind of getting stuff together. And David really kind of took that one over the goal line after doing some meetings and working through COVID and getting all this stuff put together. So thank you for doing that. Also, the Georgia chapter, brand new. Brett, who could not make it tonight, took that one over the goal line. It's an important state for us to be in, particularly with the growth and the changes in demographics they've got there. He put a lot of work into getting that chapter done and up and running. So you're not here tonight, but hopefully you're going to be viewing the live stream. Thank you for getting it done, Brett. We appreciate it. And I know we also had a call out to Blake already, but I do want to talk about Wisconsin briefly and just say thank you for getting out there every single week for the last 3 months. Since April. So 6 months. So he goes out to these farmers markets every weekend and has an LGC booth, and they call it in the political scene, fresh in the flesh, talking to people, saying hi, saying the good word, passing out flyers, introducing people. And now he has landed a training facility in Wisconsin to just do intro training for folks. He also got a certification done. And, thank you again, Blake, for doing that. Awesome work. And I'm kind of jumping around here. And so anybody that hasn't met me yet, I'm the director of membership and training, even though Alessandro is actually the national training lead. Yep. That is Alessandro. So my role within the organization is not necessarily to be the best trainer we've got, because I'm obviously not. We have some amazing folks in the room that do that. My role is more to try to put folks together that can help us proceed as a club. So you've got some great folks to work with, and the growth of the training program has been amazing as well. Moving back to demographics really quickly, though, we're now up to 4,700 members. This is paying members in our membership system. That winds up over the last 3 years of being almost 50% growth. In the last year alone, we're up by about 600 members, which is just under 20% growth. A large part of the membership growth that we saw started at the end of 2020. I wonder why. And then record-breaking numbers through 2021. Again, I wonder what happened on January 6th, right? So with that being said, one of the things that we have seen happen in 2022 is we've seen a slight decrease in overall club revenue. The reason being is people signed up because of all of the events that happened through 2020, 2021, and then they lost interest in the club for whatever reason. We have always seen that where we have folks sign up, they, don't have live activities in their areas, and so they drop out. One of the reasons I really did want to point out what was happening in Wisconsin is this is a perfect example of how you get engagement as the club, as a chapter, that makes a difference and keeps people around and keeps the growth going on a personal level. So anyway, we're on to 32 formal chapters that cover 36 states. The Rocky Mountain chapter covers multiple states. And obviously the DC, Virginia, Baltimore chapter covers multiple states. Yes, sir. We do, and I forgot to put them on the slide. So yes, Indiana got it done as well. Nice job. Yep. 33. Yep. You had a question back then? Oh, I said Baltimore, didn't I? I apologize. So it's Maryland, not Baltimore. I'm just... Yep. What? Mike, a little closer? Okay, I was trying to avoid feedback because I was getting a little bit earlier. Okay. So the next thing that I wanted to talk about is a little more on the instructor side. And this goes to more along the lines of folks who are out there willing to teach our basic firearms familiarization class, as well as our introduction to range safety. So if you're not familiar with those classes, those are the entry level, hey, I've never shot a gun before. I don't know what I'm doing, but I want to be safe. I may not even have bought a gun yet. So I just want to find out about what I should do with it before I buy it. And we had a great example of that this weekend. Unfortunately, she had to fly out this evening, but Jenny from Washington, she had a chance to go through the basic firearms familiarization class, thanks to Blake. We also got her on the range. She shot her first 50 rounds. She was an exceptional student. She, followed direction incredibly well. And by the end of it, she was sitting in on the close protection class with Alessandro, and she had a great time. So that kind of stuff is really helpful. And if you're not currently certified, or you have thought that maybe I don't have the right experience to take somebody to the range and show them how to be safe, everybody here in this room was at the range all weekend and was safe. You can do the introduction to range safety, and that is the most commonly requested class that we have. So please get certified. There's a form on the website. Dave will walk you through the process. It's very simple. It's not challenging. All we're looking for is folks that can be friendly, welcoming, and bring new shooters into the sport and into the environment in a friendly way. So again, we're up to now 9 new instructors in 2022. That is 15% growth, 65 instructors across the country. The only other thing on this slide that I'm really going to hit on, or actually there are a couple things. So Virginia, we're now approved to do concealed carry in 1 county. And in Wisconsin, Blake is now certified to teach concealed carry. And again, the way that each one of these counties and each one of these states work are very different. That's why it's a county by county effort. It's a state by state effort. And some of the requirements, to be totally honest, are a complete joke. They should be much, much more stringent than they are. And so the things that we're doing to start off with is at least getting basic recognition. And then we will be moving into more advanced classes that people actually need to carry in public. So we're trying to meet some of the basic requirements right now so that we can offer these classes to folks, but more to come on that. We've been doing this for the last couple of years, is the 1 instructor per chapter. So if you're in a chapter that does not have an instructor, your chapter president, chapter vice president can get certified through the club at absolutely no charge, because our goal is to have it available throughout the entire country. Next up, I think the important thing on this, 15,000 people follow us on Facebook. We got a few Twitter followers. That's been growing pretty rapidly. But the biggest thing for us is the organic reach that we're getting between Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Every single year, we're hitting almost 300,000 people through our organic normal followers, as well as the sharing and resharing that people are doing. So the message is much larger than our club size actually would indicate. So with that, I am going to turn it over to Lara, who gets to chat about all the other good stuff.
All right. So for those who don't know me, I'm Lara Smith. I'm the national spokesperson. So I'm the communications director for the club. If press calls you to talk about LGC, you call me. I will often let you talk to the press, but I'm going to give you the primer. I'm going to talk about when is press being difficult? When is who do we want to talk to? What's a sandbag? All that kind of thing. But I also have a much broader role. I'm also an attorney. like several members. And so I help with communication. So one of the things that I helped with was the Bruin brief. So we filed what's called an amicus brief. It's a friend of the court. We are not a party, but we had an opinion on something that had to do with the Bruin decision. It is incredibly technically legal. I won't bore you with what our brief was about, but our brief didn't get cited, but the idea got cited in the decision. So we had an effect on the court. So Bruin is an interesting decision. I have a whole big, long, hour-long discussion with LGO. For those who don't know, there's a group called Liberal Gun Owners. They're not affiliated with us, but we are friendly. I have a podcast and recording with them if you want to hear the whole detail of that. But we talk about the brief and we talk about what we did there. We also added this year a legislation tracker, which is this. You can see it on the website and you can find out. And so the club has started, and we have a wonderful, wonderful woman in Boston who's helping us with this, Mariah. And applause for Mariah, please, because she works so hard. And no one's ever heard of her because she's kind of very behind the scenes, but she goes through all the federal legislation and the Massachusetts legislation and the California legislation right now. And she says, what is the club position on this? And she says, do we want to support? Do we not care? Or are we a hard no? And so she goes through and looks at all of them and decides, does that fit with our position of root cause mitigation? And Mariah is amazing. So we've started that. This was the SCOTUS brief, the Supreme Court brief. We actually got one filed. We're going to try to do some more. We're not quite sure because Bruin was weird. I'm a lawyer, so I looked at it and it came down and Mark O, who's actually also my law partner, and I spent a good day of our lives reading this thing going, what is this? So nobody expected it. So we're not quite sure what's coming in the next year as far as court cases go. A lot of stuff has been sent back to the lower courts. You're going to see a lot of things that says this was overruled. It wasn't overruled. It was the Supreme Court has said this decision, you have to go reconsider it. That's different. They have to go decide whether their decisions make sense in light of new law from the Supreme Court. We don't know what's coming, but we're hoping that there's some Supreme Court cases that we can do another one of these briefs in. We're going to do more legislation analysis. Hopefully, I really took some time off. The rooms that I used to go into are no longer safe. And I'm just going to be blunt. There's rooms that I'm not going into. I've lost friends. I'm really glad Amy's here. And we've been friends a long time. There's other people that I'm not going in the room with. And so I'm having to recalibrate, where can the club go and have me be safe? And where can the club go and say, if I send Blake or I send Mark or I send all these people, we're having to recalibrate that a little bit. So as far as our outreach goes, it's a change and it's a growth. So if you guys have ideas, bring them to me, because what we were doing has to change a little bit after January 6th. It just does. And that's a hard place for me to be because it's people I cared about. But I really appreciate all of you being here. And the people I really need to thank, because of the people who support me, are my chapter leads, all the people. So I have Michael Pearce. And would you guys stand as I give your names? Michael Pearce, Mike Ross, Nate Welling, Lonnie, Mark O, David, Dave Shoemaker, Michael Cox, and Blake, of course. If we missed another chapter lead who's here, blame him. I asked for the list, but really all of these people are the people that I come to. I get a press request that's not the right one for me. I just sent Mark and Blake to Vice. I've sent some people to the BBC. I've sent some people to some local reporters. We get a lot of press requests. It's been interesting over the past 6 months. We're not always who they want to hear. We're not controversial anymore, and that's good. We are mainstream. When I started this, 4 years ago, like really the reach out was about 5 years ago because it was Trump. Like really when the press started calling a lot, we were so weird and it was such a controversy to interview me. And now we're just normal. Like we're not the thing. And that's good. That's growth, but it's going to change. It's going to be who it is. So my role is still, I still do the outreach, but I'm talking to different people and I'm getting more people involved. If a reporter calls you, send them to me first, and then let's talk about it. If you guys have ideas of people I should talk to, podcasts, instructors, people that who are local, let me know. We're doing outreach. As far as that goes, we're going to do some new outreach this year because we've grown enough that our outreach can be a little bit different, and COVID's over, right? In quotes, but COVID's over enough that we're in this room again. So part of that is going to be, I don't know how many of you got to meet Amy, but Amy and I have been friends for 6 years now. And 7. Yeah, Amy, stand up. Amy has shown up. So this is Amy's 4th time as an instructor here. And she and Dave have donated an enormous amount of time to our club. So an extra special thank you to her. And Dave, both of them. Thank you guys. But Amy and I met as part of the DC project, which started as this idea of 50 women from 50 states who would go to DC and talk to your politicians about guns. I've left the DC project for a bunch of reasons, part of which is being too busy here. But one of the things that the club is going to do this year is we're going to put together an outreach to DC. It's not going to be everybody, but it is going to be, we're going to go to DC and do a liberal outreach, kind of what the DC project did, to go meet our legislators and say, hey, you guys aren't doing this right. We're going to take the book that you all got. Is that later? That's later. Okay. Ed's going to talk about that. We're going to take the book. We're going to take it to the politicians and say, we have ideas and we have proof. We're going to go and reach out. If you guys have local legislators that and I mean everything from your school board to your state to your federal legislators, let me know and we'll work on outreach with you. And so, but all of you guys, we so appreciate everything you all do because it has become so much. It used to be me going to the press and now it's you guys going local and Blake going to the farmers markets and Alessandro talking to the other instructors that he knows and Lonnie talking to his wine club and, and David going, David has been really an extraordinary, David and Blake have really been extraordinary. And I want to give both of you guys a really special shout out. You guys have done stuff that we didn't even know you would do. And you just said, we're doing this. David started a chapter that took 10 years to start. And he walked into the Virginia State House the day after Gun Lobby Day, when there was a gun threat, 5 days after. I was thinking it was the day after. He walked in and he went and met with his legislators when there was a gun threat on the building. Thank you for your bravery and thank you for your work. Blake, in a year, 6 months, has probably talked to as many people as I've talked to in 5 years. So thank you. But honestly, I couldn't do it without, and all the people listening, everyone, every time you guys reach out, this is why I do what I do. And thank you so much.
I'm not grown up enough for the thing that attaches to me. So I'm not going to do it. So John couldn't be here. And I don't have the right glasses on. So we've been doing the merch fulfillment now for out of Boston for a year and a half. If you order something every other Friday, someone comes in, puts it in a box and sends it to you. It's more or less self-sustaining now. We're down a little bit from last year, a couple $1,000, but it's been a sort of a steady stream, right? A lot of what we're doing now is buying extra and bringing it to things like this or sending out chapters or doing any number of things. So being down a little bit isn't a big deal. Lots of new merch, lots of new stuff with the new logo. Has everybody seen the new logo? It's on the wall behind you, but yeah, but these are in the store now. I think these are in the store. I hope these are in the store because I keep saying that. So John's been working really hard, making sure the logos, all the art, all the stickers. I think there's the every single right for every single person down here. Yeah. Same thing back there. I think you got stickers like that in your merch bags. Oh, the whiskey glasses. Because what?
That's okay. Chip Downey can take care of
Yeah, he can take care of that. No. Make that go away. Because nothing says guns like booze. Whiskey glasses, all sorts of stuff. I mean, anything you can think you can put the logo on, John's been putting it on. And our slogans like every single right for every single person, right? All that's been fantastic. So John's been doing a hell of a job, and we're really sorry you couldn't be here. Any questions about merch? Because that was pretty much it. Do you want to talk a little bit about a book that was in your bag? Right? Everybody get your book? Yeah? The Violence Project? So to Laura's point, the just about everything in it is fantastic. It's spot on. It's exactly what we've been saying all along, except for chapter 8. Skip that. Laura had a whole bunch of people fill out little cards that we were supposed to go into the books right at chapter 8 that says, don't read this. No, you can read it, but it's going to be more of the same retread of the stuff that doesn't work. But the rest of the book is amazing. Almost everything that we've been advocating for the last 12 years or more is represented in there. All that root cause mitigation. And I know people think that's a tired phrase, but you might have noticed recently that's getting picked up an awful lot more in the press. They're talking about it, not just about guns. They're talking about all sorts of things. So people are thinking, wait a minute, we need to address the root cause of a thing. Keep up the pressure, keep up the spirit, keep saying it. Root cause mitigation. But the Violence Project is a good place to start to understand in a more data-driven analytic way what we've been trying to say for a long time. So we're really, really happy to be able to provide a copy of that to everybody tonight. The remaining copies, if there are any remaining copies, I think will end up in the store and we'll sell them off. But we thought that was a good way to send you guys home with something concrete, except for chapter 8. One of the things we're going to do, we're going to have an opinion as chapter 8. We have a relationship with the authors. We might even get them to come on SDL and we can talk about it. Talk about why we think they're wrong in that one place. Did I cover everything?
I think the only other thing that I'd like to add to that is the only thing that I really want to add to that is that the big difference about this book and a lot of other things that have been written is they have actionable steps that can be taken today by individuals, organizations, and society. And I think the way that they have organized it into those steps in addressing the root causes, which is what, again, we've been advocating for a long time, that is one of the biggest differences I've seen in this book. And that's why we were so excited to bring it to everybody. So I do recommend reading it. If you want to skip to, just the Cliff Notes, chapter 9 is probably where you want to go. But if you can read the whole thing, I highly encourage you to do so because it's really important.
While Ed's getting the microphone back, there was a question. Will this be available after those ones that are left over are sold on the website?
You can actually, it's on Amazon. Yeah, it's on Amazon.
But will it be available through our website was the question.
Probably not. I think we just ordered enough for the meeting, and then whatever's left we'll toss out. If it's somebody specific and we've got an extra one, I'll set one aside. All right,
Roger that. Thank you.
I got one more thing, and then we're going to turn it over to Michael, who's going to talk about a lot more interesting stuff than what I've been saying, because I got a lot of numbers. Every year for 2018, every year since 2018. Keith Ellis was a chapter president in Florida. He passed away. Keith was incredibly active in his community and incredibly active with the LGC. Show of hands, who met Keith? That's amazing guy. When he passed, we thought it was appropriate to recognize his contributions and then establish a sort of periodic memorial that we give out during this meeting. And it's to recognize sort of persistent and consistent contributions to the club or contributions to their local community. And without further ado, this year's Keith Ellis Memorial goes to Blake Alexander, who really wanted one of these on his table, so I had to take his picture at the... No, I'm kidding. You broke it. Every weekend. Go sit down. you know, unless you want to say something, because I'll let you say something. Yeah, no, you may. In front of the podium. Very short speech. Wait.
Hello, everyone. It's been so nice to meet everyone here at National Convention. I didn't know about this award or, this memorial. And nice to meet you, everyone out there who's watching or will watch this. I never met this fine gentleman. No, Keith Ellis. Yeah. No. I've heard a few people name drop his name with very reverent tones and fond memories in passing this past weekend. And I just want to say, I hope I can carry on this torch of interacting with our communities, bringing gun safety and responsibility, and reducing the barriers to get there. The Liberal Gun Club is growing, and it's going to be us that's going to grow it. So I hope I can continue to make all of you proud.
I had a better picture of him, but nobody could find it. So I snapped that last second when he walked in the room tonight. Yeah. Somebody lost a camera that had it on it. That's it. I think that's it. Yeah, that's it. For our club update, we are honored this evening. I'm staring at the guy I'm feeling honored about, and he's not paying attention to me. There you go. We are honored this evening to welcome Michael Tinker Pearce. I am very happy that I can call him a friend. Last couple of years have been very serious, and I think Tinker's going to be a little serious, but not too serious. An author of some renown and a swordsmith of some renown, and he occasionally builds a gun. And they only occasionally. So without further ado, Michael, you ready? It's all yours.
No, of course I'm not ready. So when Ed suggested that I should be the speaker, my reaction was kind of like Kenneth Branagh in Much Ado About Nothing. She loves me. Why? Yeah. And Linda had the answer, said, it's not like you're going to shut up anyway. And I've got my notes over here because I have never given a formal speech before, and this is not going to be one. So, but it's going to be kind of like that. And I will be talking about guns, but bear with me. I need to set the stage here a little bit first. Can you all hear me? Yes, because Ed didn't ask that earlier and we couldn't. So, so events this weekend mean I can skip the entire first section I outlined. So depending on who you talk to, I am either baby boomer, Generation X, or the newly identified Generation Jones. because we're the tail end of the baby boom that got to grow up watching the wheels come off. And, I grew up in the 60s and 70s. Inflation, gas crisis, the very real threat of global thermonuclear war, and the realization that we not only could not, we must not trust the government. And that's what I grew up in. So I joined the Army. Because I was testosterone poisoned and hopeless. Because I was pretty sure that no matter what happened, we were all going to die. It's kind of grim, but that's where we were at. We felt disenchanted with the United States, disenfranchised, and bitter about the previous generation that got us into this mess. I'm sure you younger people will find that feeling familiar. But believe it or not, we know where you're coming from because we lived it too. When I officially entered adult life after my service in the Army, I knew a number of things. Everything was going to crap. I would never be able to afford the lifestyle I grew up with. I would never be able to afford my own home. And on the off chance that we did not all die in a nuclear war, I scoffed at the idea that we would still have the right to own firearms, or indeed have any rights to speak of by 2020. I was not optimistic, and I spent the 80s. I get it. Generation X, they were not lazy. They just knew there was no point, because anything I built with my life was gonna vanish in a nuclear fireball. And if you weren't there, it's very difficult to understand that today. So now we have a backdrop. And it is a cliche to say it was a different world then. But it's always a different world, and it was a different world then. I grew up in the suburbs north of Seattle, where housing developments still had tracts of undeveloped land around them, which we were absolutely forbidden to enter because some unspeakable fate would befall us if we did, in the woods, which made them, of course, completely irresistible to us. And my mother was not a gun person. My mother was, in fact, convinced that the mere presence of a BB gun would inevitably result in widespread carnage. And to be fair, she had met me. But my friends' parents were less restrictive. And we started out with BB guns. The ones, the little spring-powered 200 foot per second BBs. More of a dangerous toy than a weapon. And we took full advantage of that. But then some of my friends had air rifles, and we had the woods. And so we went into the woods with air rifles and hunted, because Dan Coulin's mom was always happy to get some squirrels or a few rabbits. And so even though it was not part of my upbringing, it was very much part of my childhood. And then, as mentioned previously, I joined the Army because what the hell else was I going to do with myself? And went to Germany. And I had developed an interest in air guns at this point, and Germany was air gun heaven to someone in 1980 because they had all the good air guns. And I procured one of these without the knowledge of my Army superiors. And I hunted the hedgerows and the farms around the post, because the farmers there were very happy to have someone shoot rabbits on their property. And this guy, Heinz, was a great guy, could barely communicate. But I'd go onto his property into the hedgerows. And a hedgerow in Germany, by the way, is not a hedge. It's a band of woods with full-grown trees in it. And I would go through these and shoot rabbits and take them over to his house. And his wife would fry them up, and we'd sit there and eat hunter salad and drink apple corn and Kirsch until we couldn't see straight. And that was a good time for a young man. Then I went to Kansas and I hunted more there, and I was entirely inept at it and bought all the wrong stuff to do it. But I'd always liked guns because my mom didn't. So now we get to the meat of it. Civilian gun culture in 1983, 84 was very different than it is now, and very much the same. In 1983, if you owned an AR-15, it was viewed as kind of cool, but eccentric, because most places you couldn't hunt big game with them. There were better choices for small game, endless better choices for small game. And if you wanted to pop prairie dogs from 100 to 200 yards away, there were way better choices for it. AR-15s at the time were very, very bad for that sort of use. So it was unusual. This was also the time when in combat shooting sports, the 1911 A1 reigned supreme. This was not because we were stupid. It's because, one, it was the best tool for the job at the time, and two, the games were rigged to favor the 1911 because people thought that, right or wrong. And by the way, the much ballyhooed unreliability of 1911s based on the Army trials, these were guns that were past their sell-by date before they were sent to Vietnam. And I did not know this. We did not like 1911s in the Army. They were rattly, unreliable pieces of junk. But it didn't matter because they were also literally the least important weapon we dealt with. They didn't not replace the 1911. This is just my opinion, because it was the best thing for the job. They didn't replace them because it didn't matter, and it was going to be a hassle to change them. And they finally got to the point where it was going to be less expensive to buy new guns than it was to fix these ones. And, but anyway, some guy shot someone with a .45 in Korea and convinced the entire world that it was the best thing since sliced bread. We will not mention the colonel's name. And so IPSC was built around the 1911 and was designed to favor the 1911. Now, the other thing to bear in mind here is we did not have anything approaching a realistic understanding of stopping power. And 45 seemed like the best deal. So that's what we did in competition, and that's fine. High capacity 9mm were not much of a thing then because there weren't very many of them. And by and large, they would not reliably feed the absolutely abysmally bad hollow points of that era, which were by and large useless. They were badly designed. This is where 9mm plus P came from. The hollow points sucked so bad, you had to fire them at velocities that would damage the gun to make them work. And if you're still carrying 9mm plus P in your defensive handgun, just stop it. Okay? We know how to design hollow points now, and there are perfectly good standard pressure ones. Stop beating up yourself and your guns. Please. It's a personal plea. So anyway, I got involved in IPSC shooting, which, if it were a graph, you could have stood and watched in real time as unrealism crept in. Starting with one of my pet peeves, compensators. People these days don't, by and large, get them unless they're involved in competition shooting. And I hear, well, they don't work on 45s because they're low pressure. In what world is 18 to 23,000 PSI low pressure? They work fine. They work well enough that within 2 years, if you didn't have one on your gun, you weren't going to win at a major match or meet. And I'm just clearing things up here because I've got a captive audience for my pet peeves. 38 Super was not adopted because it worked better in compensators. It was not. Yes, it did work better in compensators, but it gave you 2 to 3 more rounds in the gun without losing your major power factor advantage. And that was a real competitive advantage at the time. And the game was rigged deliberately against 9mm, high capacity 9mm. So anyway, that's the pet peeve out of the way. Now, I'm going to damage my Fred credentials here. In 1985, I had one of the first Glock 17s in the country. And I was deeply impressed with that gun. It was amazing. It was lightweight. It was soft shooting. It held 18 rounds, and it was absurdly reliable. I was much less enchanted with the crappy plastic adjustable sight that broke immediately. So I moved on. And I became a police officer. And that was interesting. It was a small town in the mountains outside of Everett, Washington, with 80% unemployment because the logging industry had just collapsed. And we had 800 people in town and about 4,000 people in our service area and mutual aid agreements with all the surrounding communities. We also had white supremacists, pot growers, a major multi-city motorcycle theft ring, and whacked out survivalists. It was fun. And this was at a time when people questioned a police officer's decision to carry a semi-automatic pistol. Being me, I did not carry a revolver. I carried a 16-shot double-action compensated 9mm, which as far as most of these guys, they understood that about as well as they did the space shuttle. And as an interesting side note, I had to stop carrying it because a range instructor talked to someone who insured the department, and they wanted to insure it as a submachine gun. My partner actually had a submachine gun in the trunk of his cruiser. We already insured a submachine gun because we had some unusual problems. And my law enforcement career came to an end because somebody said, "Hey, we're getting together at Caro's tonight. Come on out." And I got there and all my friends were there, and there were people I didn't even know knew each other. And they started saying things like, "We really like your commitment. We love you. We respect you." And I'm like, "Oh my God, this is an intervention." And it was. Because I was getting very, very dark and very, very unhappy because I had realized that inevitably I had zero ability to go along to get along. And I was going to come into conflict, possibly in the time and place, violent conflict with my fellow officers. And knowing that was tearing me up. But I didn't feel like I could quit because I felt like I had to be there for that if it came to that. And my friends disagreed. And I thought about it and I quit and moved on to other things, which was possibly one of the best decisions of my life. So back to 9mm. 9mm did get a bad rap in those days because we had crappy hollow points. It also got a bad rap because people shot 9mm faster. They fired more shots in a shooting. There was a shooting 2 years ago where a female police officer put 14 rounds in a guy before he dropped. And on gun pages other than ours, thank you all for that, everybody was like, "See, 9mm don't work." It's like, okay, for all we know, the first shot that hit this guy dropped him. The whole gunfight took 4 seconds. He didn't have time to fall over. And thinking back on it, there was a lot of that involved in the shootings in the 80s. It's like, ooh, I have a gun that holds lots of shots and I can shoot it quickly and accurately. And I've been trained to shoot until the threat is over. But now that means 12 to 14 rounds instead of 6. And I did wind up carrying a revolver on duty because I was offered a Smith & Wesson Model 28. And the option was I do not know how old Smith & Wesson M&P, and I do not know how many years were behind that gun already, but it showed every single one of them. And I was not going there. So back to the AR-15. It was eccentric to own an AR-15 for a long time. And then the Soviet Union collapsed and our relationships with countries in Eastern Europe changed and the market got flooded with AK-47 semi-automatic versions of AK-47s. You could pick one of these things up for $125, which was a lot more than it is now, but it still wasn't much. And bad guys were very aware of this and immediately put them to bad use, but that was never actually that widespread. And they're not stupid. They very quickly figured out that this was a very bad optic for them to shoot up streets full of innocent people. It was bad for business. So naturally, by the time they'd figured this out and knocked it off, we got the assault weapon ban, which did not ban assault weapons. Like the Gun Control Act of 1968 before it, it banned weapons that would arm poor people, particularly poor brown people. And it was structured to be completely toothless, and it was. And the only thing it did was glamorize the weapons and prime us for them so that when they failed to reinstitute it, we were right there. We were right there with money in hand. And some very smart people figured out that AR-15s can be adult Lego. And the whole market bloomed out of control, which has been great fun for all of us. And now we're at the point where criticizing the platform will get you made fun of and called a FUD, which may be or may not be true, but that's the way it is. It has become status quo, almost de rigueur, for the real gun person to have an AR-15. I have an AR-15. Wow, I'm actually getting through this. Glocks proliferated as well, and I've owned a lot of Glocks over the years. They are wonderful handguns. I just don't like them that much. And that's fine. But if I were, by some massive failure of judgment, to be put back on duty on the street, I would say, I'll have that Glock 17, thank you very much, and put a red dot on it if you don't mind. Because I'm old, but I'm not stupid. Knowledge is not a thing. Knowledge is a moving target. And I'm well aware of that. And I move with the times when I'm not being stubborn, which occasionally happens. And then we had the whole tactical culture. And the thing is, I knew people in the late 80s and the 90s who had an AR-15 and a plate carrier and a high capacity 9mm with multiple reloads. We called them cranks. And they were. But I mentioned before it was a different world then. It's a different world now too. The great experiment, which is what they used to call the United States, is failing. And one of the only two politically relevant parties in this country is actively pushing hard to implement an authoritarian government. Okay, I am a student of history. When Trump began making speeches, I thought, I've seen this before. Benito Mussolini in the 30s. It's the same talking points. It's the same rhetoric. It's the same finger pointing. And I made myself very popular in the mainstream gun community when in 2015, I openly stated that the NRA had allied themselves with the enemies of freedom. I'm too stupid to pull my punches. So now we've got one party pushing hard to implement fascism. A Republican Speaker of the House, I think, for the Texas State Legislature, left after the end of a 30-year career after kicking butt and taking names to defeat a measure that would allow the state legislature in Texas to overrule the popular vote. And as he left, he said, we beat them this time. They're going to try again. And if they succeed, say hello to fascism. When a 30-year Republican calls his own party fascists, that's a lot more significant than us doing it. And it matters, and it's not over just because Trump is for the moment out. In addition to that, panicky white people have finally achieved the realization that they're not going to remain the majority, and they're going to lose their privilege. And it scares the ever-loving bejesus out of them. And they are reacting in the way people typically react when they're losing their privilege. Fascism, authoritarianism, panic-stricken support for what they think will make their life, will allow them to retain their privilege. And of course, they're wrong. It won't. But there's a hopeful sign. There is some reason for hope. Because liberals, us, are finally waking up to the real purpose of the Second Amendment, to resist tyranny, and not just the tyranny of government, but the tyranny of social inertia, of inequality and bigotry that is woven into the very fabric of our nation. It's overdue, and it may be too late, but at least it's happening. And I'm comforted by the fact that I was wrong. We still have our guns. We're still alive. And I was able to buy a home. I cannot mimic the lifestyle that my parents had, even with multiple incomes, but it's not bad. And we're alive. The nation faces a lot of challenges that look insurmountable. Being a history buff, I can tell you, we faced challenges like this before. Okay. Within my grandparents' lifetime, government troops fired on workers for the crime of wanting to be treated decently and paid reasonably. We got past it. We need fundamental changes if this country is going to continue in anything like a recognizable form. Not that the status quo is the most desirable form. I want the US we were supposed to be and never were. It's a big ask. I was raised with the ideals that the US was meant to be a land of opportunity and equality, and I believe in those ideals. But the study of our history has revealed it to be one of slavers, conquistadors, oppressors, a land of lynchings, ghettos, and concentration camps, a land of apartheid, first officially and now economically. We're better. We're not there. We're a nation where the tail of wealth is wagging the dog of government and society. And that's one of the things we've got to change. Social inequality, educational inequality, economic inequality. These are the things. And I almost cheered when I saw that. Every civil right for every single person. If we're going to become the country we always claim to be and never were, that's what it's going to take. And maybe I'm an optimist. I don't know. I hope not. By the way, in case you're wondering, an optimist believes we live in the best of all possible worlds. A pessimist fears the optimist is right. I'm a pessimist. We need, as is enshrined in the very founding mission statement of this organization, to address the ills that underlie the problems that have created the situation we're in now. And we can't do that by staying quiet. A lot of us as liberals have kept our mouths shut because we're gun-owning liberals and we're tired of taking the crap. We can't do that anymore. And we don't just need to tell the other guys that we're here and that we're serious. We need to convince our politicians. There are two relevant parties, political parties in this country. And one of them is only mostly on our side. We need them to know we're here and we count. The last estimate I saw said 40% of gun owners are liberals. Guess what year that started to change and grow? I'll give you a hint, 2015. We can't be quiet anymore. And we don't just need to be heard by our elected representatives. We need to be heard by all those silent, good-hearted people out there who are tired of taking the crap. We need them to know that gun owners are not all lunatics. We need them to know that we're not abnormal. We need to speak up. We need to tell people that that's how we get there. So we need to walk out of this place and we need to speak up and be heard at every chance and every opportunity. Enough of us make enough noise, they're going to have to listen. I'm already seeing in mainstream media, I'll just cite the example, CNN, they interviewed a bunch of women of color in Los Angeles who were training with firearms and asked them why. And when they the interviewer asked one spectacularly stupid question. Aren't you worried you're glamorizing violence? No. Where do you even get? It's a dumb question. But then he got back to the desk with the anchor and he said, it's not simple. There's nuance here. And we need to recognize that. And the anchor responded, and liberal politicians need to start taking notice. And they're going to take notice because we make so much noise that CNN talks about it at the desk. So if I have to ask something of you people, and I have no right to do so, but I'm going to, when you leave this place, go out there in the world and get loud and be heard and refuse to not be heard, because that's the only way we're going to get there. Anyway. On a personal note, I have loved this weekend. I never expected to be able to be here. I could not afford to be here. They made me be here. And I am ever so grateful because I have never had an experience like yesterday and today. I have never been to a gun event that wasn't a match. But I've spent 2 days with this most extraordinary feeling that I'm here with my buddies and we're just having fun and being ourselves and blowing shit up. It's part of the fun. And it's amazing. And I am very, very grateful to Ed and the others that twisted my arm and insisted I be here and made it happen. Thank you very much. And thank you all for being here and hanging out and being wonderful people that you are. I'm honored to be among you. And I think you guys are awesome.
Mike's. No, you're done. I thought it would be great to have a fantasy author come and maybe talk a little bit, uplift us all. No, thank you, Michael. Thank you, Michael. We have one. All right, you go melt down. We do have one more order of business. So thank you all. And thank you, Michael. And that was actually really good. He didn't know what to say. Like we spent weeks talking about it. And, it was between him and Jim Downey. And Michael lost a bet. But I am so glad that I'm so glad we could hear that. That was good.